In the book, there's a section where you talk about the ability to measure. I don't know if it's near death or out of body, but there is some sort of a system that was developed to sort of measure when you're here and when you're there.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions with, this is getting out a bit, because in remote viewing, is this something that's purely mental, i.e. accessing the target, or if the target it has to be viewed from a certain position. And that's what they're doing at Maimonides in New York. And they had set up an intricate system, but so that the target could only have been seen if an individual was standing at a specific location. And yeah, they were able to determine that there was disturbance in the area. Now the individual was in a room, in another part of the building, and had strain gauges there that had electromagnetic disturbance saying something's here, which would have been required to have observed the target as it was being generated.
So in an out-of-body experience, something leaves the body, a consciousness or whatever. In a near-death experience, you go somewhere else. There have been some pretty dramatic incidents where people see things from a perspective that they should not have, or go somewhere that they should not go.
Well, my classic experience it got me deeply involved was a friend of mine who was a pilot in Vietnam. And what happened is he was in a Cobra gunship. You're familiar, those are tandem where you got one in the front and one in the back. They were alone, which they shouldn't have been. Flying over enemy territory, got hit by a machine gun, got shot down. He was in the front seat, flips forward, does not move from the time they're hit. The helicopter is going to crash. There's only a tiny landing strip, not big enough to accommodate the whole bird. So they pull the nose up to mitigate the impact as it's crashing, but we're trying to, mitigate the impact of the crash. But you also, what's key here is you do not know until everything ends what the orientation of the ship is. And they went down in this small clearing, and the individual is now up out of his body, and he looks down. You can see the aircraft sitting here, and about a mile away is a friendly fire support base, and trackless jungle all around them. He comes back, he meets a hooded figure who says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I want help for them, I'm in trouble." And he says, "But don't you know?" He says, "No, what?" He says, "You're not dead yet." And with that, he pops back in his body, he sits up. The backseat, who had been running away from the helicopter at this time, turns and sees him move, runs back, drags him out of the helicopter. His leg's broken, his face is literally burned off, so pain is setting in. And they have a big discussion about, the pilot says, "There's a friendly fire support base in this direction, about 90 degrees off." And he's saying, "No, follow the nose, it's in that direction." Pilot goes off, bad guys sweep through, miss him, and then the friendly support comes in. They find him, and this is the only case that I have where they now put him in a helicopter, give me enough time to break on that. Yeah, the jungle penetrator, where they can actually lift him up above. So he now physically replicates being out of his body. He's in his body, but it's now exactly where he was from an out-of-body position. He can see how the helicopter is oriented, that in fact the friendly fire support base is where he thought, and this guy, the pilot, has gone off into trackless jungle. So before he passed out, he says, "By the way, pilot's over here," and they went out and rescued the pilot as well.
A colleague of yours, Raymond Moody, who was at UNLV for a while, associated with Bob Bigelow, coined the phrase, I think, near-death experience. And in his most recent writings, and you reference it in this, he talks about taking people along. People die, and they carry people along in these experiences.
We're now having multiple experiences with people where you have an individual, you're anticipating death and being in there. There are several, Raymond's the one who wrote about it. But, where yes, you have independent external witnesses saying, here are the changes that took place at the time of transition.
Seems like there is a thread that ties all these things together, even though they seem so disparate. They're unlike each other. UFOs and psychic phenomena, remote viewing, out of body, near death, communication with other species, telekinesis, psychokinesis. Yeah. Is there? Is that true?
There is, and it's consciousness. I think one of the mistakes that are made in these fields is they tend to stovepipe, they delineate. I'm going to talk about UFOs, near-death experiences, psychokinesis, ghosts, whatever it is, and look at them in separation. And I think what we need to do is step back and look at them in totality and then do macro pattern analysis to determine what are the correlations between these, because they do exist.
So is this a step toward people taking it more seriously, and do you think it's going to work? I see that in the context of like Tom DeLonge, who's trying to move the UFO topic along.
What's
and
this?
The blowback to taking it seriously and honestly investigating paranormal,
Yeah.
in quotation marks, phenomena. It seems like it's a really uphill, a steep climb.
Yeah, well, I've always mentioned if you're going to participate, you need three things. One is you better have some thin skin because you're going to be attacked. I don't care what your position is, you're going to be attacked. If you're going to enter it, you probably better have a day job or be independently wealthy because nobody's making a lot of money at it. And the third is you better understand conspiracy theory because you're now part of it. If you believe there are conspiracies or if you don't, you're part of the cover-up.